Buddhaṃ bhagavaṃ abhivādemi. Sawakato bhagavata dhammo dhammang namasami. Supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka saṅkho saṅkhaṃ namami. So we'll begin tonight's program with 10 minutes guided meditation. And the theme of tonight's meditation is metta, loving kindness, goodwill. So as usual with your meditation, try to find a comfortable posture. Try to keep your back straight, but at the same time relax your limbs and the muscles all around your body. And with the practice of metta bhavana, there are many different ways to approach it. I'll just give you one this evening. So you might begin by placing your attention on the chest area, where your physical heart is. So you close your eyes and send your attention to your heart, the region, the area of your heart. And you have to use your imagination or memory a little bit and try to remember or imagine the feeling of goodwill that you've had before. So the Buddha said it would be that feeling if you were a parent holding a newborn baby. Feeling of automatic love, goodwill, sense of caring. That's the feeling you're aiming to cultivate at this point in the center of your chest, more or less where your physical heart is. So the practice of metta meditation involves both a feeling that is loving, relaxed, gentle, soft, happy, and also a thought. And we begin the meditation by reciting to ourselves the thought, may I be well, may I be happy. You could use other words, but for today we'll just use these words. So silently reciting, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be well, may I be happy, and at the same time focusing your mind at the center of your chest, developing a warm, loving feeling. And you have to make that feeling tangible. And that's the initial challenge of this meditation, is to bring up that feeling the best way you can. So the feeling is cool, it's not hot or agitated. The mind is cool, calm. Some people compare it to the feeling of water. Like if you were on a hot day and you needed water to cool you down, it's that feeling. Or you could imagine a light. For those who have a visual mind, you can imagine a light radiating at that spot, the center of your chest. So whether it's a feeling or the light, you develop it at the center of your chest, at your heart. And as the meditation continues, you slowly, gradually spread this feeling outwards from your heart, up towards your head, across your chest to your arms, down to your stomach and your legs. And all the while, you're holding the thought, may I be well, may I be happy. And as you keep doing this, you're literally bathing yourself, your inner self, with the feeling of metta, goodwill, kindness, just as a parent would have kindness for their newborn baby. And even though in the beginning it may be difficult, if you do this practice often, regularly, you get better at focusing your mind and developing the feeling as you recite the words. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. So you're becoming more aware of every part of your body internally, right down to the tips of your toes, up to the crown of your head, filling your whole body with the feeling of metta, bathing your consciousness with metta. And the second part of the meditation is to maintain the feeling of metta and the thought of metta, and now turn to think of your parents one by one. So maybe think of your mother. May she be well, may she be happy. And you can visualize the face of your mother, a happy face, peaceful, calm. And you can imagine sending out this positive energy, warm, kind energy that you've developed for yourself. Now you're sending it to your mother. May she also feel this same way, feel at ease, feel well, happy, and you can recite, may my mother be well, may my mother be happy. And you can do the same for your father. Visualize his face. May my father be well. May he be happy. And if you have more time than we do here, you can take the time to really develop a strong feeling with the thought directed to each person. And you can move through your family and relatives. And you can think of your teachers and guides, spiritual guides. One by one, visualize them. Send your thoughts of metta to them. And you can adapt the meditation. So if your time is short, you could say, may all beings be well. May all beings be happy. And direct your attention in all directions, above, below, to the front, to the left, to the right, behind. So if you have little time, you're just sending this thought in all directions, whoever, wherever, whatever living beings there may be. May they be well, may they be happy, free from suffering. If you had more time, you might go through different lists, names of beings in different places, different kinds of beings, so humans, animals, devas, ghosts, or you may just go in terms of direction and places. So everybody in my neighborhood, may they be well and happy. Everybody in the city I live in, whether it's Melbourne or Singapore or wherever, may they be well and happy, and so on. This depends on your time, but you can always just include everybody, all beings in all directions. May they be well, may they be happy, free from suffering. So you're starting with yourself, bathing your own consciousness with metta, and then going outwards from yourself in all directions.
Good evening, Long Po. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Good evening, Long Po and everyone. We will now formally request for the Dhamma talk. Brahma Jaloka Ti pati saham pati katanjaliya tiwarang ayacata santi tasata araja kajatika ese tutama anukam imam bhajam.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So good evening and blessings to everybody. As we're still in the thick of the coronavirus pandemic, I thought this evening I'd talk a bit about the practice of metta, goodwill, loving kindness. It's a practice that the Buddha encouraged all of his students to cultivate on a daily basis. And sometimes you could say that really the practice of the Buddhist path leading to the end of suffering is synonymous with the practice of metta. We're following the teachings of the Buddha, we're doing that which is truly beneficial for ourselves and for others. And that partly defines what the practice of metta is. It begins as a thought. You might say a right thought or correct thought. A thought of well-wishing for oneself and others. But when it's practiced in conjunction with many other qualities that we are developing following the Buddhist path. So practiced in conjunction with metta, with mindfulness, with wisdom, with effort, with faith. To practice metta, we need faith in the Buddha. And when we remember the Buddha and our teachers, so in this current era, it might be Lumpur Cha for one example, or Lumpur Sumedho, whose birthday is tomorrow. When we remember the Buddha, remember our teachers, we're remembering particularly the quality that, say, the Buddha, the mind of an awakened Buddha is without anger. Anger has been abandoned from the mind of a Buddha or an arahant, an enlightened being. And it's important sometimes to remind ourselves of that, because reflecting on the Buddha or our teachers reminds us that human beings can abandon anger, cultivate metta, and completely free their minds from anger. It can always be done. And there's no such thing as, sort of righteous anger in the Buddhist path, or there's no real excuse for having anger in the mind when we follow the Buddhist path. It's a goal to abandon anger, and it can be done because those teachers and practitioners since the time of the Buddha have proven it can be done. So it's important for us to have that confidence in the practice, because we all know sometimes metta is hard to develop and anger is very easy. Often it's the easiest way for the mind to go in any situation. But because we know it can be abandoned, then we get our strength from that faith and confidence in the path of practice. But of course, we have to put the practice into practice. What we've heard and learned, we have to practice it. And that's where the challenges are. So this is one reason why the Buddha encouraged us to develop the thought of loving kindness every day. Whether you're feeling angry or not, whatever's happened in your life, whether your life is going well or you're facing difficulties and problems, whether you're sick or healthy, doesn't matter. We're learning to develop the thought of loving kindness every day, bringing it into our lives, to be proactive and ready for any situation that may prompt or trigger anger. So we're actually developing it before we get angry. It's the best way to develop metta, not waiting for the last minute when we become angry and then grasping around trying to find the metta in our heart, because that might be too late and it might be too difficult a challenge to bring it up when we're getting angry. So practice metta, maybe first thing in the morning is a good way to begin your day, practicing metta meditation. When we do metta meditation, we're setting our correct aspiration, the aspiration to cultivate goodwill, to abandon negativity, irritation, and anger. That's our aspiration. But of course, we also have the reality that we have accumulated much karma in our life, and there'll be times when metta seems to disappear and anger overwhelms us, overcomes our mind. And so hand in hand with the practice of metta, we also have to practice patience and tolerance and keep learning, observing, and developing awareness of ourselves. Because what tends to be the case, especially in the beginning of our practice, is that we have the ideal, I want to be somebody who has metta, I want to follow the Buddha and develop goodwill, friendliness to others, compassion to others. But there'll be times when we lose our goodwill and compassion and we're caught into anger, and then we judge ourselves. And it can compound in the sense that something makes us angry, a situation or a feeling or a memory, it comes up. And then we get angry because we've become angry. It's a very common experience people have, especially in meditation. They start their meditation with the ideal, I want to be peaceful, happy, develop goodwill for everyone. But then straight away they find it difficult to bring up goodwill or maintain goodwill and fall into a negative state of mind. And then when they realize how negative they become, people often become angry because they're negative and it go in a downward spiral. As Ajahn Chah used to say, it's like water. Water always flows downhill if you just leave it to itself. You don't dam it up, you don't try to control the water. If you just leave it to go nature's way, it goes downhill. Our mind is like that. It tends to go downhill when we're not looking after it. And going downhill means it goes towards more negative, unskillful states of mind, and they tend to compound each other. So we get angry, and then we might get angry because we get angry. Partly because we're attaching to the ideal, I should be someone without anger, I should be a good Buddhist, and so on. So we have to watch for that. And part of this practice of goodwill is developing the patience, the tolerance, and the acceptance of who we are. And accepting, our starting point is not a mind that's full of metta, maybe. It may be one that does have a lot of anger, ill will, periodically, habitually. So we have to accept that and try to develop a skillful attitude towards it. The one way to do that is to try and bring up this quality in the mind, to see that your own mind is something very valuable to you. And it's something we need to take care of. In our life, we spend a lot of time trying to take care of the world around us. Where we live, we clean it and maintain it. Maybe we go to work, we try and take care of our job and our duties and responsibilities. We buy a car, we try to take care of our car. We have relationships, we try to take care of family, parents, siblings, and so on. But often what we forget is we also have to take care of our own mind in the midst of all those other things. And the practice of metta is really learning to take good care of our own mind. And to take care of our mind, we have to value it. We have to see it as something that's very central to our whole experience as a human being. And it's a worthwhile investment if we do take care of it. And much of the practice of metta is learning how to take care of our own mind well. So it's just like the Buddha said, it's like a parent, a mother or father has a newborn baby. Instinctively, the parent wants to care for the baby, look after it, protect it, feed it, nourish it, clean it, whatever is required. And without a second thought, it's a very automatic feeling. You do what you have to do, even if you're tired, even if there are problems involved, expenses involved, whatever it takes, we look after the newborn baby as a parent. It's actually developing that kind of attitude towards your own mind. And often we're resistant to that. You start to practice metta and straight away doubts will come up. Why? What's the point of this? I'm not worth it. I don't deserve it. Often we already have an underlying view of ourselves. It's a form of, you might say, a wrong view or conceit. And we have this underlying view, I'm no good. I don't have much merit. I'm not a very good person. And quite often in the beginning of the practice of metta, we find it easier to have metta for others, whether it's animals. Most of us like to be friendly to animals, or people we know outside of ourselves, friends, people we meet. Often it's easier to have metta for them than it is to have for ourselves. And that's one of the first hurdles. We have to see that it's in our own interest and the interest of other people for us to take some time to take care of our own mind. And that means developing both mindfulness, awareness, and this quality of goodwill, which brings up the acceptance, the right kind of attitude to deal with whatever your mind is throwing up to you and bringing up. And it may sometimes be anger, ill will, negativity. Once we have that right attitude and we keep cultivating the right attitude, then to develop this awareness, self-awareness, because that's what exposes anger as suffering. If you're like me, and when you start to practice meditation, there's so many things that you have blind spots in your mind, in your experience. You're not aware of your own habits, your own way of thinking, your own emotions. And as you begin to meditate, it's a bit like a journey, and your awareness starts to develop. You find that you start to notice things that you didn't notice before. And say, particularly with angry thoughts, negative thoughts, you start to notice you're not very happy when you're angry. With an angry thought, it's always accompanied by an unpleasant, stressful feeling. There's tension in body and mind when you're angry. And if you do take the time to practice mindfulness and become more observant of yourself, whether it's in meditation or just in daily life, you can't help but start to notice with anger you're stressed, you're suffering. Every time you hold on to angry thoughts, you get painful feelings in body and mind coming up. And you tend to reinforce them if you're not aware. You just carry on thinking in that way, feeling that way. So for many people, this is the first breakthrough they have in their meditation, is recognizing that with anger, an angry feeling, an angry thought, we're suffering. And we don't want to suffer. That leads on to looking for the way out of suffering. And developing metta heightens your skills, improves your skills in recognizing this simple truth that anger is suffering. Non-anger or metta is not suffering. It brings a good feeling, a happy feeling for us, and leads on to skillful contact, skillful thoughts, skillful speech, and skillful action. As a result, the more metta we develop, the more that will come into be part of our life. But we have to get this basic understanding first that negativity, anger is suffering. And I don't just mean as a theory, as an idea, but actually observing it in yourself. And that's quite hard because we don't like to observe ourselves when we're angry. If you can remember when you've been angry in the past, often we are defensive. So you get angry when somebody does something you don't like, and your friend or colleague will say, "Oh, you're angry." And you say, "No, I'm not." We don't like to admit it often. We don't like to admit it to ourselves. We don't like it to admit it to others because we know it's not a good thing, and nobody likes to admit bad things to themselves or others. So often we hide it, or often it's hidden behind the logic, the reasons that are coming up in our mind when we're angry. So, say you have kids and your kid is naughty. They don't do what they're told. They make a mess, make a noise. They're not doing something they should be doing. We as a parent, they might say, "Oh, my kids are so frustrating. They're not doing what they're told." And we're getting angry, but we're holding on to the fact that we're a parent. Our kids are our children under our care, and we know what's right for them and what's correct for them. So as we get angry, we have a good reason, but we're not observing the anger hiding behind the good reason. So all our thinking seems correct, but the emotion and the powerful negative energy coming up with the anger we don't see because it's hiding behind the reasoning and the way of thinking or the view. And that could be, at this time in the world, it could be coronavirus, isn't it? It could be somebody in your workplace or your street catches coronavirus and starts infecting people around, and we say, "Oh, they shouldn't be here, they shouldn't be out, they shouldn't be spreading the virus." And that's correct. Maybe that is correct, it's just as an abstract thought, but you're also now looking at your own reaction, internal reaction, how you feel, what you're thinking, and as it comes up, you might not be willing to take responsibility for your own feelings because you're caught up in the correctness of the situation, your indignation. "Oh, they shouldn't be spreading this virus around. They should be more careful. They're wrong. They're bad." Whatever the negative thoughts are that come up. And we're not seeing the underlying anger that is being fueled in that situation. So often anger will hide behind good reasons, logics, our beliefs and views on what is right, what is wrong. The only way we can untangle this kind of web of experience is by practicing more mindfulness and then directing it to the thought of kindness. And this will expose the opposite, the anger. And we become more aware of how much we suffer the more we cling to angry thoughts and feelings. So we're working on two fronts, you might say. One is becoming more aware of our thinking, the negative thinking, questioning that, looking at that and seeing what comes up when we focus on negative things and unpleasant things in ourselves, in others and in the world. But also looking at the feeling that comes with it and becoming more aware of this process, how painful feelings, whether it's a mental pain or a physical pain, start to stimulate negativity in our thinking and create anger, ill will. And so the practice of metta is, what it's doing is dampening down the fires of anger, readjusting your emotions, balancing your emotions, so you're developing more of this tolerant, caring attitude, just like the parent for a child. And then also, as we become more calm, more tolerant, more mindful of the thought of metta, goodwill, and that will help us to deal with the negative thinking and maybe adjust our thinking, maybe expose where we're being over negative in our thinking, over judgmental, just focusing on what's wrong but not seeing what's right, which is a lot of the experience of anger, isn't it? When you're angry, you tend to just see what's wrong, what you don't like, what's not right in your world, and you're ignoring at that moment what is right, what is good, what is correct. So as we focus more on the thought of metta and the feeling of metta, and particularly led by a regular metta meditation, but also just bringing it up into our daily life as a skillful habit more, then it's helping to balance up our emotions, and we'll start to become more aware of, when we're angry, but also aware that we're not angry all the time. Anger is a temporary experience. It's a thought, a feeling, an emotion that comes and goes according to causes and conditions. And the more we practice, the more we see that. And that will give us more confidence that we can let go of anger, because once you know it's temporary, it's impermanent, it's something that you can let go of from your mind, just like the Buddha, just like our teachers. And many, many people have practiced this and found good results, if only on a small scale. So it may be simply something that's been bothering you in your life, maybe a unresolved relationship problem with another person in your family or someone at work. And every time you remember them or think of them, it brings up some anger, some ill will, feeling of tension, some negative thoughts. But as you practice metta, you'll start to notice that, because it will expose it. You're radiating thoughts of kindness around the world in all directions, and there'll be these black spots, dark spots that, your metta isn't yet penetrating to that person or that part of yourself, it could be, or that person. And there may be memories that, every time they come up, it's hard to develop the metta. So we have to learn to work at it. We have to learn to adjust our thinking and the goodwill, just like the parent for the baby. The baby, the parents are not judging it on its personality or its behavior. They're just responding with metta. That's the aim, is to develop that similar ability to see the good and the need to take care of ourselves and the need to take care of others. There's something common we have with every living being in this world, even though we don't all like them all, we don't love them all, but we can see the common humanity with other people. Just as we don't like pain, others don't. Just as we want to progress towards happiness, others do as well. And you're recognizing that the best way to respond even to somebody who is genuinely doing something wrong or even harming you, in the end, the best way to respond is with metta rather than ill will. Because when we follow ill will, we're harming ourselves, harming this mind, filling it with negativity, holding on to the negativity, bringing up pain. And also, it will come out in our speech, our behavior towards that person maybe, and make it worse for that person, make the whole situation get worse, what we call making karma. So it's in our own interest to practice metta. It's in the interest of others to practice metta. But this doesn't mean to say we're excusing when others do bad things or wrong things or harm us, but we're just adjusting our right view and our attitude towards others to recognize, what do I want for this person? I want them to change. If someone is genuinely doing wrong things, unskillful things, whether it's towards us or just generally in society, you want that person to change for the better. And that change has to be generated from a place of goodwill from your heart, and you would want them to develop it in their heart. Anger is not going to lead to positive changes. It will tend to lead to more karma, more conflict, more revenge, more negative outcomes. So if you really want problems with other people to stop, metta is the quality to develop. Of course, it's not always easy, but it's something we practice regularly in order to develop as a part of our life. And then it can come out in our speech, our actions, and the way we interact with the world. And it's always guided by wisdom. When we chant in the evenings, we often chant the reflection on universal loving kindness. And we say, may all beings be free from suffering, may all beings be free from anxiety, and so on. But we always finish that chant by reflecting on karma. All beings are the owners of their karma, heirs to their karma. And this is where we get wisdom. You know, the Buddha pointed out that one of the dangers with practicing metta is we do become idealistic about it, you know, just wanting everyone to behave well, and then we get disappointed when they don't. We want people who are suffering to get better, and sometimes it doesn't happen quick enough or just doesn't happen. Sometimes we have metta for people and they turn around and still harm us and hurt us. So one of the things that balances our practice of metta and protects it is wisdom. And the Buddha encouraged us to reflect on karma every time we practice metta as well. The fact that we have metta and we're developing that for ourselves and others as a basic attitude in daily life. But also we can't expect the world from it. You know, there will be occasions and people that you have metta for, but they don't seem to improve or change, or their situation doesn't change. Sometimes you can see the good results of your metta, but sometimes you don't see them, and sometimes even it seems to get worse. So we have to reflect on karma. You know, one thing that to think about is that when you have metta for somebody, this is good karma. You're doing the right thing with your heart as an intention of goodwill. But the outcome, what happens next, depends on many different factors. You know, the karma of that person, say you're spreading metta to them, wishing them well, hoping their life improves, say. That improvement, what changes, what comes next, will depend on different factors, and your metta is only one of them. You don't have to doubt about your metta. That is definitely a good thing. The more you practice it, the more you should have confidence in that. But if it doesn't lead to immediate good results, well, don't get disheartened, but just accept and reflect, well, the karma of the situation, the different factors involved. Maybe just some of the negative karmic factors are so strong, your metta can't overcome them yet, and your goodwill is a positive factor. But maybe the negative factors, the karma of that person, are just so strong. At this time, they're what seems to be winning, and that person is still struggling and doing things that are harmful to them, to others, or they're still ill and they can't get out of their illness, or whatever the problem is. We can't be blind in the practice of metta. We have to accept, sometimes it works and you see wondrous, amazing results. Often it's a very subtle thing and you can't yet see results outside of yourself, but at least you can be sure a thought of metta is a good thing, and your anger will be reduced by one unit, 1 point, one percentage in your mind every time you bring up metta. One of the other problems with metta, the Buddha pointed out, is when we develop it as a theme in our life, whether it's in meditation or just in our general daily life and interaction with people, is that one of the dangers is we become attached to people. And when you become attached to people, you become attached to the outcomes from your metta. So you particularly see this with people who are close to you, like your kids, your partner, your friends. There may be certain people in your life that you develop a lot of goodwill for, and very easily and continuously, regularly you have your goodwill, you forgive them, you wish them well all the time. But then gradually sneaking into that situation as we start to become attached to them. And our metta changes from what the Buddha was encouraging, which is unconditional goodwill, just wishing people well and not expecting anything in return, not attaching to the outcome, not letting craving or attachment enter the practice of metta. That's the ideal. That's what we're aiming for. But then sometimes craving and attachment does come in, and you might see this with your close family members or close friends. So when things don't go well with that person, then we get disappointed or even anger. And so metta can change to anger because of the attachment we develop. So, often it's the people we love the most that make us the most angry. And that's something we have to start unraveling, developing more awareness of our own, the kind of metta we have, and again, reflecting on karma. And so particularly, say you have a child or a partner or a close friend, you have metta for them, but then they are also their own person, and they may make choices that you don't agree with or that are harmful or unskillful. They may have their own karma ripening that is beyond your control. And you have your metta for them, but then they're doing things that you don't agree with, that you don't think are the right for them, and so your metta can quickly turn into anger because of the attachment that's come into the relationship. So that's something we have to keep addressing, keep looking at, and reminding ourselves of the law of karma. And you do your best with metta, but you can't attach all the time to expecting outcomes that fit with your ideals and what you want from the situation. It won't always happen. The other danger is with this attachment that we form to people and beings when we have metta is that it can lead to lust. So particularly with the practice of metta meditation, the Buddha said, well, don't just practice metta for the people you like, and particularly the people you can become attracted to, usually the opposite sex, people of the opposite gender, because that's not what you're looking for. You're not looking to increase your attachment or increase your lust for other people. And metta, not guided by wisdom and mindfulness, can go that way. So you'll see sometimes it's very easy to have metta for, if you're a guy, metta for the girl in the office or your neighbor or some friend, but to have metta for other guys is harder. Or if you're a female, to have metta for guys maybe is easy, but for other females it's harder. You'll see how easily metta becomes caught up in desire, lust, and attraction when it's not guided by wisdom. So our aim is to develop metta in conjunction with wisdom, mindfulness, so that it's really used as a tool to free our mind from anger and from greed and attachment. So not easy, but a practice to be done, something that we can do as human beings. And when we do, you can see the good results. I remember once in one monastery, another Buddhist monastery, not here, there was one lady who was on the committee of that monastery, and she fell out with the president of the monastery committee because he had a different view on one aspect of the way the monastery was run. And so they fell out, they stopped talking to each other, and they had harboring a lot of grudges towards each other. They would talk to their friends behind the other person's back and criticize them, say negative things about them. And that's very common, isn't it? In a workplace or a committee or even in a family, we harbor grudges and we gossip, backstab and so on. But this lady, she was quite smart at the same time. She realized she'd fallen into anger and it wasn't good for her, wasn't good for the committee of that temple because the committee wasn't cooperating as well as it should. And she wanted to find a way out. So she consulted me and I said, well, look, you've got to start practicing metta. However much you dislike the president, this other guy, it's not in your best interest to hold on to a grudge. It's not good for him. It's not good for everyone. So you're going to have to work on it. However difficult it is, keep working on developing the metta every day. Take it on as a practice until the problem is solved. I don't mean the problem externally only, I mean internally in your own mind. That's your challenge. How can I let go of my anger, repair the relationship? So she took this on board and she did it for 2 years running. Every day she practiced metta towards this man. And at first, it seemed very hard. It's like trying to cool down something that is hot. You throw a few drops of water on a hot coal or a hot pot of food, you throw a few drops of water on it, it doesn't cool it down, does it? It just steams and carries on fizzling and bubbling and staying hot. Our mind is a bit like that. When we're hot and angry with someone, a few drops of metta isn't enough. You've got to keep doing it. Make those drops into a more continuous stream. Make them into a a big flood of metta if necessary. And that's what we have to do by practice. So she did that. She took it on board. And gradually over 2 years, she practiced more and more metta for this guy until one day she said she came into the temple after 2 years, having consciously practiced metta for 2 years. She came into the temple one day and she saw the guy and she felt totally normal. No anger, no unpleasant feelings, no unpleasant thoughts. She realized that day it's gone. And she could see what led up to that point. It's like 2 years of practicing metta for this person. And she said this was the most valuable lesson she'd had in her Dhamma practice up to that point. This is someone who did a lot of dana, a lot of good things in other ways, but she said really the most valuable lesson she learned from helping a monastery, doing acts of charity and generosity and all of that was this lesson, learning how to let go of our anger towards this man and bringing the mind back to a place of normality. The practice of metta is like this. If we keep practicing it and we get better at it, well, it's easier. We can let go of our anger more quickly. We can bring up the metta, the thought of metta more quickly in situations where we're tempted to clash with someone else or develop angry thoughts to someone else, or in situations where we're tempted towards being disappointed or annoyed. Maybe we fall ill or something goes wrong in our day. You know, maybe our habit is just to feel annoyed, get angry, say something, do something in anger. But if we're practicing metta regularly, we get better at letting go of that anger quickly and replacing it with the metta, bring up the kindness, the tolerance, the goodwill. We get better at that. And that's one measure of our practice, you know, how much and how long we dwell with anger on the thought of ill will towards a person or a situation or towards ourselves, and how quickly we can let it go. And hopefully as you practice more, you get better at doing this, you know, quicker and better at letting go of anger. This is what some of our teachers have learned. You know, the better they get at their meditation, whatever meditation technique they use, not just metta, it could be using the breath or contemplation of the body, whatever the meditation they use, they get better at letting go of the hindrance of anger and bringing up metta, replacing that, until it becomes something that's part of them. We say a barami. So like the Buddha talked many times about his development of the barami of metta, the different challenges he went through, being bullied and attacked and made fun of, and all kinds of different situations in his past lives. Sometimes he would describe them. So like there's one of those stories, like when he was the leader of a pack of monkeys living in the forest as a bodhisattva. And every day he's just thinking of how to lead these monkeys, find food for them, protect them from danger, look after them when they're sick. That was his job. So he's developing the barami of metta. And he had to use his metta in different ways. So like, you know, sometimes he has to be quite fierce with some of the naughty monkeys. Sometimes he has to be very gentle with those monkeys that were sick or tired. He would have to vary the way he employed his metta depending on the situation. And not just for monkeys, but for others. So the story was that this hunter came through the forest, but he was lost. And he came across the monkeys, and he asked the leading monkey, of course, in those days, monkeys could talk to humans. So he asked the leading monkey, the bodhisattva, to show him the way out of the forest. And being a bodhisattva, asked for help. He responded with, yes, I'll help you. But he's also thinking of the other monkeys under his guidance. So he thought, the best thing is if I take this hunter away from the rest of the monkeys, because I know he's a hunter. Maybe he'll, be a bit cruel and want to hunt some of my monkeys. So he took the hunter away, leading him out of the forest to show him the way home. But also to take him away from the other monkeys so they'd be safe. And as they're walking, this hunter was tired, so he sat down for a rest. He's hungry, so the bodhisattva gives him some water and some food. And while the bodhisattva monkey is tending to the hunter hatched this plan. I'm going to, get out of the forest and catch this monkey, so I've got a prize from my hunt today. So he picked up a rock and hit the monkey over the head. He didn't kill him, but he drew blood and really gave him a headache. So the Bodhisattva, being mindful, but also being compassionate and kind in that situation, he taught the man. He said, look, I've been helping you. I'm showing you the way out of the forest. I'm feeding and looking after you. You repay me by hitting me over the head, trying to kill me. What kind of a man are you? So he brought up the sense of shame in the hunter. The hunter realized, yeah, I've done a bad thing. So the Bodhisattva monk is actually able to teach the man the error of his ways. He should be more grateful, more appreciative of when people help him. And then he continued to show him the way out of the forest. So he did everything correctly, even though it was a risk to himself and he got hurt. So that's one example of the Bodhisattva's metta and how we employ metta in a situation. Sometimes you have to think of yourself or others, think of even your enemies. And our teachers are just the same. Many of our teachers have shown great metta over the years, like Ajahn Chah, our teacher. He always said he got the most of his wisdom he got from when he started the monastery, Wat Nomba, where he lived, teaching other people. And he said, as a teacher in a monastery, you're basically a rubbish bin. This was the phrase he coined for the teacher, the monk who's a teacher. You're like a rubbish bin for everybody's problems, their complaints, their criticisms, their stuff, their mental stuff, their physical stuff. A teacher gets it all like a rubbish bin. But he said he learned from that. He learned. So as you practice metta, your wisdom is developing at the same time. So it's not a pointless thing. You may be treated badly sometimes, but you're learning, you're growing from it. So he said he grew the most and his wisdom faculty developed the most from practicing metta, teaching monks, nuns, and lay people. And all the teachers are going to be much the same in one way or another. They'll have learned from teaching others, putting up with others, taking responsibility for others. They also develop it through their meditation. So you hear many great stories about these teachers' meditation. So like Luang Por Chah, many stories of his metta. Sometimes it's just his endurance, leading the Sangha, teaching lay people through the day, putting up with tiredness, illness, but carrying on performing that duty of helping others, sometimes in very specific ways. So I always like the story. There's one monk, Ajahn Kampun, who lived with Luang Por Chah. He loved Ajahn Chah. He had such faith in him, but personally his practice was not going so well. He wasn't very mindful. He had a lot of issues and problems in his practice, but Ajahn Chah had great compassion for him. And he had one problem. He's addicted to cigarettes. Like many monks in the old days, they had come from the lay life addicted to tobacco. And Ajahn Chah and the Sangha made a rule about 1970. They made a monastic rule saying, we're going to stop smoking because it's not a good example for the lay community. And this monk just couldn't give it up. So he'd have to sneak out into the back of the forest to smoke. But he was always scared of Ajahn Chah. If Ajahn Chah knows that I'm still smoking and there's a rule banning it, I'll get in such trouble and Ajahn Chah will be so critical of me. So he's always very afraid of Ajahn Chah. And one day, two of his friends who were also smokers, they invited him out to the back of the monastery. They said, tonight, after the evening meditation, we'll go out, we'll have a nice cigarette together. So they crept out into the back of the forest and they kept telling each other, watch out, make sure Ajahn Chah's not around. He always knows what we're up to. Even if he doesn't see us, his mind, his meditation is so powerful, he'll know what we're doing. So be careful. And they went out to one spot and they sat down and they started to smoke. And one of the monks was a bit arrogant. He said, don't worry, Ajahn Chah won't be able to approach us without us hearing him because it's the dry season. And if you tread on the leaves of the forest, you'll hear the sound of the leaves crackling and you'll know he's coming and we'll be able to put the cigarettes out quickly. So don't worry. But Ajahn Kampun was smoking and he didn't believe that. He thought, I know Ajahn Chah, he's so smart and his meditation is so amazing. You know, he'll know what we're up to. And I just don't trust that. I'm sure he could turn up at any moment. And as he was thinking that, he turned around and who should be standing there is Ajahn Chah. And he said it was the most frightening thing in his life. He was caught red-handed, just like a school kid. You know, when the headmaster comes when you're smoking, he had a heart attack, a near heart attack. And he said from that day on, being caught by Ajahn Chah, smoking, he never smoked again. That was enough to put him off for life. That's the kindness of a teacher, just doing what the teacher needs to do. Being present when the student is making a mistake was enough to bring up mindfulness, determination to give up tobacco. There's many stories like that. Sometimes Luang Por Chah would use his metta in samadhi. So if you read his biography, you probably might have read it and you remember there's one village layman who accompanied Ajahn Chah on some of his walking tours and was always the butt of Ajahn Chah's criticisms, and he really pushed this layman hard for long periods of time until he became a monk with Ajahn Chah. So he was always known as a monk. He was an older man and he became a monk, and he was always known as one who Ajahn Chah loved, but the way Ajahn Chah showed his metta was always to tease him, teach him, criticize him, never let him rest easy, because he was trying to train him to be mindful of defilements. And he was a very stubborn personality, so Ajahn Chah worked really hard on him. So some people didn't understand. They thought Ajahn Chah just didn't like him, but it's not the case. Ajahn Chah was trying to teach him and gave him a lot of attention. Anyway, later on, once he became a monk, there were some deer in Wat Pah Pong, and one of these deer, the male deer, in the mating season, the deer became quite aggressive, and sometimes they'd run at monks, charge the monks. And this monk, poor old monk, got charged one day, and the deer knocked him down and gored him, hurt him, and really caused him bad injuries by repeatedly butting its head, its horns into him. So he was rushed off to hospital, and he was in hospital, and the doctors said he might not survive because he was an older man, quite frail, not very good health. What they would say these days is, you know, he had pre-existing health conditions. So he was dying in hospital, and the monks who went with him said, oh, this is it, he's not going to survive. The doctor says he's not going to survive. The only one who can help him now is Ajahn Chah. So they called for Ajahn Chah, and Ajahn Chah came, travelled out to the hospital, and he came and he sat meditation with the monk, who was unconscious. He was in so much pain. I think they gave him anesthetic. So he's unconscious. But Ajahn Chah sat meditation next to him for a long time. And eventually he recovered. And when he recovered, he told the other monks during his time he was unconscious. He obviously didn't know what was happening around him, but he had this experience where he, in his dream state, he saw Ajahn Chah coming to him, a bright, radiant light. And he saw Ajahn Chah spreading metta to him. And he could see this was healing him. And the next day, the doctor said, oh, he's starting to recover. It looks good. And from then on, he did recover. And he always attributed that to the metta of Ajahn Chah. This is like metta when it's concentrated, you know, somebody who actually develops it in the practice of samadhi and jhana. Maybe they can even help in a very specific way like that. Perhaps in another story you may have heard is like Ajahn Chah when he first went to the West and flew from Thailand to London with Ajahn Pabakro. They were flying, and when the plane took off from Bangkok, one of the tires burst on the plane. And the plane had to fly on to Karachi, Pakistan, to land, to refuel and let passengers off. And before they landed, they were warned by the captain over the loudspeaker. He said, look, we've got a problem with our wheel. One of the tires is blown. We don't know how well this landing will go. So everyone had to brace themselves had to put away all their possessions, put the seatbelts on, go into the brace position. So a lot of people panicked. They were crying and unhappy. So some people turned to Ajahn Chah and said, help us, help us. Because seeing a monk, they always turn to the monk in the crisis. And Ajahn Chah wrote in his diary that at that point, he entered samadhi. He closed his eyes and sat samadhi as the plane was landing. And they could see there's lots of fire engines and ambulances lined up on the airport runway, ready for them. There was a helicopter flying over. They were expecting the worst. So Ajahn Chah entered this deep state of samadhi, and he said he focused his mind just on the wheels of the plane and spread metta, as it were, focused on that wheel. And when the plane landed, miraculously, didn't crash. There was no serious damage or accident, and nobody was hurt. So afterwards, everyone disembarked. The funny end to the story is Ajahn Chah noted to the monks who were with him, he said, when there's a crisis and everyone's panicking, they run to the monks and ask for help. But when the crisis is over, all the people, they went up to the captain and the air hostess and said thank you, and they forgot about the monks. They didn't come to the monks to say thank you. So Ajahn Chah just pointed that out about human nature. When we're suffering, we go to the monks. When things are good, we forget the monks and we go to other people. So anyway, just a few examples of when metta is developed to its potential in the mind of an Arya or an Arahant. But every time we have a thought of metta, a moment of metta, we're going in that same direction. We're increasing the power and the habit of metta in our mind, and it will come out more and more in our speech, our actions, and we're decreasing the habit of anger. Ill will gradually decrease the more metta we develop. Goodwill will become stronger, become part of who we are. So that's a very good practice, I'd say, to develop during this period of the coronavirus pandemic. So for tonight, I'll leave you with these reflections and wish you all, may you all develop lots of metta and lots of goodwill for yourself, for others. So I'll end the talk there.
Andamayang ovada kathaya satu karang adamase satu